Artistic Director and Conductor of your Dayton Philharmonic. Happy New Year, happy 2022, and welcome to Piano Bench Chat for January. This one's coming early in the month because I wanted to be sure to talk to you a little bit about this wonderful concert that's coming up at the Dayton Philharmonic called East Meets West. It's a program I've been looking forward to for almost 2 years, and even though things have changed, you know, COVID, everything changes these days. It is just a wonderful program of very varied music from different centuries, different eras, different cultures, and it all comes together in a fabulous mix. That was the very beginning of what's probably one of my favorite, if not my very favorite, opera overtures to one of my favorite, if not very favorite operas, Mozart's first big hit opera called The Abduction from the Seraglio. If you saw the movie Amadeus, this is the opera about which the emperor supposedly says,
"Too many notes,"
to Mozart. Mozart was right. But for me, trying to play the score at the piano, it is a lot of notes, and it pushes my piano playing to the very limit to try and play it at speed. Actually, in the context of the East Meets West Philharmonic program, score reading is what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. It's something that I've spoken about in previous chats, but it really came through to me last week. One of the central pieces, in fact, in a way, the central piece of the East Meets West, it's easy for me to say, East Meets West program, the piece around which everything else on the program revolves, is the concerto by wonderful American composer Reena Esmail. Reena's heritage is from South Asia. Her music blends both Western and Hindustani classical music traditions, and it's just incredible to work on music of hers. The piece of Reena's, which is going to be the central piece on this program, is her Clarinet Concerto. And John Kurokawa, our wonderful principal clarinetist, will be doing the solo. This is a piece that was originally written a few years ago for a clarinetist named Shankar Tucker, who's an extraordinary musician, classically trained Western-style clarinetist. He is also trained in Hindustani classical musical techniques. He's a composer. He's on YouTube. He's everywhere. If you just Google him, you'll find all kinds of great stuff about Shankar Tucker. And one of the things that he is adept at is improvisation in the Hindustani classical music style. So Reena's piece has lots of improvisatory sections where she simply indicates the raga and the key that the clarinetist is supposed to improvise in, and then they just go to town. Well, for John Kurokawa to play this piece, John is an amazing clarinetist, but he is training in the Western tradition. He doesn't have the Indian classical music tradition. In order to make it possible for us to play the piece, late in the summer, Reena basically did a transcription and a reworking of the piece so that it could be played by a Western trained clarinetist. So it had a part where actually everything was written out. And that's the version that we'll be playing. In fact, that version will be, I suppose, be getting its world premiere. And just last week, John and I had a Zoom session with Reena, who lives in Los Angeles, to go through the piece. And it was an interesting lesson for me in score reading. But before I talk about that, let's hear and see just a little excerpt of that working session that we had with Reena Esmail. So I think I've said this before. The thing about score reading is it's all deception, because nobody can really play an orchestra score at the piano, even if they're Vladimir Horowitz. Now take the example of that Mozart overture. Yeah, I mean, I sort of struggle but when it gets loud, I can't play what's really there, not just because I have a piano, not an orchestra, but because there's percussion, triangle, cymbals, and bass drum in the orchestra. So that loud section really sounds like this. So it really is just fooling people to say that you're playing a score at the piano. But sometimes it's really useful, like when you're working on a concerto. That enables me to sit down with a player, with a soloist, and accompany them in the piece. Even if I leave out a gazillion notes, it helps me have a sense of how to accompany them with the orchestra and helps me get ready for the rehearsals and the performance. Now, the trick is, besides the trick, when it came to Reena's concerto, John said it would be most helpful for him, in addition to me playing what I could of the score, would be if I also conducted for him, because when he's in these now written out improvisatory sections, he's got a lot of notes to play in a short period of time, and seeing the beat out of the corner of his eye helps him know that he's more or less lined up where he's supposed to be. So that was an interesting challenge, because the whole thing about playing a score at the piano is as I said, you can't do it. It's impossible. But what you have to do is you read the score and you adapt what you see on the page to your technique. You play what you can and you leave everything else out. And that's a skill that I've gotten pretty decent at. And unless a concerto is incredibly complicated, I can usually be productive in a session with a soloist. But because John wanted me to also conduct, I had to figure out how to play something useful from this score just using my left hand. And my left hand was never my strong hand as a pianist. So it was an interesting exercise for me. Now, it helps in the first movement of Reena's concerto that the accompaniment in the orchestra is very sparse and sustained. If I did it with two hands, the first page of the orchestra part to Reena's concerto would sound and look like this. And if I do it with one hand, it sounds and looks like this. So it is doable. Later on, the piece gets more complicated, and obviously I have to leave out all kinds of stuff. But as you saw in that demonstration, I was able, after a fashion, to sort of play what I needed to play to create the illusion of the orchestra's accompaniment and keep the pulse going for John. It's a lot of fun to work that way. It is, of course, a big challenge, but it's all about getting ready to be in front of the orchestra, and that's where the real fun begins. And the real fun begins when you come to the concert and can hear this amazing piece with our wonderful soloist and our wonderful orchestra. So if you're in the area, if you're anywhere near Dayton, come see this concert on January 7th and 8th. It will be a wonderful program. It's got music of the American Impressionist composer Charles Griffiths, his wild fantasy piece called The Pleasure Dome of Kubla Khan. It has Reena Esmail's Clarinet Concerto. It has Mozart's Overture to the Abduction from the Seraglio and Richard Strauss's incomparable Rosenkavalier Suite. It's a very exciting way to start the second half of the concert season, and I'm looking forward to it very much, as well as all the other concerts and ballets and operas coming up in the Dayton Performing Arts Alliance season. And don't forget, there is this Omicron thing, or Omicron if you prefer, out there. Please be careful, be safe, wear your masks, get vaccinated, because if you're not in the audience, we can't be playing. So we need our musicians to stay healthy. We need you to stay healthy so that we can all enjoy this wonderful music. Again, Happy New Year. Have a wonderful January, and I'll see you next month for February's Piano Bench Chat.